While teaching on the Sabbath, Jesus asked a question: is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm? To save life or destroy it? It's an interesting question because the concept was so foreign to the Jews. They thought about the Sabbath in terms of following all the rules. And the Pharisees certainly didn't think about the Sabbath in terms of doing right or doing harm. This is why the Pharisees were watching Jesus so carefully on the Sabbath. They had in mind all the things that they thought were unlawful to do on the Sabbath. And they got many of these rules straight out of the Bible. They weren't to carry things outside of their homes. They weren't to light a fire. They weren't to plow or to harvest. They couldn't write or erase or cook or wash clothes or tie knots or untie knots or build or demolish or even swat a fly. And each of these rules came with a ton of other implications. But all of these rules were to remind them of one thing: that we are not the rulers of this world. God is. So since Jesus is Lord of all things, including the Sabbath, Jesus could do whatever he wants to do. So certainly Jesus could heal on the Sabbath. But Jesus asked the question in such a way as to challenge the way they thought about the Sabbath. The Pharisees were used to thinking in very concrete terms of what they could and could not do on the Sabbath. But Jesus challenged them to open their minds and think about what was right and wrong. The question that Jesus raised really had less to do about the Sabbath and more to do with whether we should do good or to do harm, to save life or destroy it. And he asked it in such a way as to imply that there is no in-between. If we're not actively doing good and saving life, then we're by default doing harm and destroying it. So whoever knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it sins. When we sit back and do nothing when there's countless needs around us, we're not morally neutral. We're showing our evil hearts. How can you seek to do good and save life today? When you think about it, this is exactly what Jesus did for us. Instead of allowing us to remain in our sin, he came down and died for our sin. Not because he had to, but because he's full of good and love. So reflect the love of Jesus in your life and share his love with those who desperately need it. God bless you and see you tomorrow.